the pivotal players you want to put in your starting team, in my opinion. The first round especially, you want the best player possible at your pick, or if you trade back or trade forward, to come in and hit the ground running. And I don't see, outside of Bradley Chubb, there's a couple others, like Derwin James is a safety, Denzel Ward, Minka Fitzpatrick.
But you know what I'm thinking? Those guys are so good, Minka Fitzpatrick and Derwin James, that they can come in, right? They'll come in and play the strong nickel, like and replace a safety each time. You know what I mean? Like they would come in, and it would be a middle linebacker, outside linebacker, and either Derwin James or Minka Fitzpatrick. I would prefer Derwin James at that position. He can line up and match up against the slot, the tight end, or be a linebacker. He'll be a little undersized, but you know, if you have big guys up front, they can run free.
But he is strong though. He's he's definitely player. Strong. He's a strong boy. The only thing I think is if we get to number 10, say for instance, and Derwin James and Minka Fitzpatrick are there on the board, don't be surprised if the Raiders go Minka. Only purely on the basis of that we brought in Derek Ansley, the defensive back coach, who knows him very well. And I think in an interview somewhere it was praising him of how dedicated he is, how he got upset at failing something, an exam or some sort before a game. You know, he knows the player. I'm sure he'll be in the hierarchy's ear to get hold of him if he's on the board. But in terms of talent for me, Derwin James is probably more of a standout player. He can pretty much do anything on the football pitch. Yeah. Obviously, besides a few positions. But he's very versatile, his tape hits you. As soon as you watch him, he's explosive on the tape, you know?
Yeah. Hey, Gavin.
That's what you look for.
We got our guest ready to come on, so let me give him a quick call.
Okay, no problem.
All right, James. Let's see.
Yo.
James Arcellana, what's up, man?
Not much, man. What's going on?
Nothing much. We're recording, so we've got James Arcellana at Raiders Reporter on Twitter, on with us. Thanks for coming on, man. Also, podcast Black Hole Banner with your boy Q, right? Check it out.
Yes, sir.
BlackHoleBanner.com, man. Thanks. We couldn't keep it yesterday, but thanks for coming on to give your thoughts for a little bit, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me on.
No worries, no worries.
No, we obviously have known each other a little while, so it's nice to actually have you on the podcast.
Yeah, man, it's funny. You know, you spend so much time on Twitter, you feel like get to know people, so it's cool to actually hear voices and talk in a different format.
Obviously, exactly. Gavin has a sexier voice because he has a British accent, but you can't compete with that, can you?
No.
Scientific fact: British accents make everyone 10% hotter.
Yeah, well,
not if you're British though. That's just normal.
I don't want to brag. I don't want to brag, but I got the looks to go with it.
Yo, James, tell me, man, what are your thoughts? You like what the Raiders are doing the last few days?
I do, man. You know, I came into free agency without very high expectations. I didn't think that, given the cap space, given the MAC extension pending, that a whole lot was going to be done. So this was kind of exactly what I was thinking, but a little bit better. They filled a little bit more holes than I thought they would. I do kind of, this is a little bit nitpicky. I kind of wish they had grabbed another corner who was better than Sharice Wright. But besides that, I don't have a lot of complaints. There's some guys who I think could be, nice little additions. I don't think anyone who was signed is necessarily going to be a massive impact player. Jordy Nelson, if he returns to his old form, could be. But besides that, I don't think these guys are necessarily impact players, but I think they make the team more, more solid.
Yeah, I was telling Gavin earlier, listen, you got to have good backups. One of your cornerbacks go down, you got to have somebody who can come fill in. So you got to have, guys like, Jalen Richard, Keith Smith, guys like that, Tank Carradine could come in and step in for Bruce Irvin if he gets hurt. So I like the depth pieces. So, you get the second, third tier players ready in place and you go into the draft and draft your main guys, So within that way, it's pretty good. And what I really like is we didn't sign that guy, the cornerback from the Rams, and we signed 10 players for that price, so which is pretty good.
Yeah, definitely. I think Jermaine Johnson, the quarterback from the Rams, was never really a realistic option for the Raiders. That was one of those things that just, for me, reeked of an agent putting the Raiders' name out there to create competition. You know, they just didn't have the money to spend that much on one position. They've got a lot of areas that need to solidify. Like you said, depth is incredibly important. A lot of people don't fully realize that because it's not as sexy, it's not as exciting. But a guy like Tank Carradine can really take, you know, an average defensive line and make it a lot better by just giving the option for a rotation. You know, Khalil Mack and Bruce Irvin spent incredibly large amounts of time on the field. Get a little bit of rotation going, then those guys are more fresh in the fourth quarter, and you see bigger impact plays at more crucial times. So I think little pieces like that are incredibly important to a football team.
Yeah. And also clears up a lot of areas. You know, we can finally do mock drafts, right? Before we're just doing mock drafts like, okay, this is who we're going to pick. But what if that place, you know, we don't need that position to be drafted after free agency. So a lot of things open up. What do you think are the biggest holes? You know, we were saying wide receiver 3, right tackle, a pass rushing 3 technique, a linebacker who can cover. What do you see as the biggest holes in after the free agency right now?
So I think the two positions that are the biggest holes for me would be the nickel corner and the right tackle. Like I said, I'm not a huge fan of Sharice Wright. That's the one signing that doesn't excite me at all. I mean, you never know. He's a guy who might not even make the final roster. But for me, I'd much rather see like a mid-round pick who has upside than Sharice Wright, who for me has already shown his upside is not very high and his floor is pretty darn low. So, you know, again, but that's nitpicky in the big run.
He got crossed over.
Though,
like it was got crossed over like it was a basketball game by.
Yeah, I mean, they were calling him Charisse Wright because he got burned so often. So I mean, you know, that's not really a great sign.
Is he better than Antonio Hamilton? I think so. Is he better than Antonio Hamilton? Yeah, so maybe he can come in and be better than Antonio Hamilton and take his place. That's all you can hope for sometimes.
Hey, can I just say something as well?
Yeah.
Just remember, these players have been playing in maybe a similar scheme or a different scheme or the same scheme. So just because one player plays poorly in one scheme or whatever doesn't mean they're going to play poorly in another. So it's all about how they adapt to what the Raiders want to do on defense. Mm-hmm. I just wanted to put that out there. You know, some of these players sometimes excel when they're playing in a different scheme, and some of them just they sign for a team and then they feel they're out of their depth. Yes, you should be able to adapt to any scheme because you're supposed to be a professional football player, but sometimes these players just don't have that in them. They're kind of set in their ways.
I think we saw that with Sean Smith, who had a very strong career until he hit the Raiders and was in a scheme that didn't fit him and was horrible. So, yeah that's 100% accurate. I do think, though, that, you know, with some guys who are veterans, you can tell quality-wise whether or not they're going to, even in the right system, be great. And for me, Sharice Wright in the right system is going to be average, you know, which is fine for a depth guy. Yeah. It's fine for a depth guy, but I think that's still kind of, you know, less than ideal when you could potentially grab someone in the draft who has more upside, right? Who might, in a year or two, be a quality nickel, you know? So, again, it's nitpicky, right? Because it's a minor contract. The guy might not even be on the roster next year. But, you know, that's why we talk about this stuff, to get really deep into it. So it's not anything that upsets me by any stretch of imagination. But, you know, we want to talk about stuff, we'll talk about stuff.
Yeah, no, of course.
We have that guy coming in who filled a physical with the Ravens conveniently right after Crabtree was cut.
Crabtree became available.
Yeah. So maybe we'll get him if we'll third wide receiver might be not as bad of a need. I think he's in the building right now, so we'll see what happens.
And that I think the third wide receiver also will go a little bit to what Gavin was saying about system, right? Because there are a lot of signs right now that are hinting that John Gruden really is going back to 98. And if he is, then the slot receiver position isn't nearly as important. You know, if we're seeing a lot of 2 tight end sets, running back sets with a fullback, we may not necessarily see a slot corner on the field as much as you do with other teams in the NFL right now. That's another thing worth noting, that the top two may be far more important than the top three.
And we got two fullbacks in the team, and most teams don't have one. So yeah,
and two pure blocking tight ends. That's another thing. A lot of teams don't even have any pure blocking tight ends. The Raiders have two right now. So I think, like I said, there are signs that the offense we're going to see is going to be very run heavy. In which case, maybe there isn't as much of an urgency to upgrade over Roberts.
Yeah, I think that obviously you've got to have options, haven't you, really, at wide receiver? And outside of Cooper and Nelson, we haven't really got a lot, have we, really, in terms of... I know the draft's coming up, but you just don't know what you're going to get from wide receivers coming out of the draft. Some, obviously, of the top tier could potentially hit the ground running, but if you look outside of that, some of them maybe not so much. So it depends on the money. If the money's good, I mean, he's not going to get what he was going to get at the Ravens, which was just absolutely ridiculous amount of money for a player of his, of his career so far. But if you can get him a bit cheaper, then I put actually out there on my Twitter account a video of his highlights from last year. So he can catch a ball. So that ticks one box, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like he kind of for contract ready a couple of months. That means he may not be ready by the start of training camp, and so if you can get a guy like that on a cheap 1 year prove it deal because of that circumstance, because he may not have been affordable otherwise, that's always the smart move in my book. You take a little bit of a risk on that injury, but only on a 1 year deal, so it's okay, and you end up potentially getting a guy who you couldn't afford otherwise.
Yeah, there's also other rumours that they pulled out once they knew that Crabtree become available as well.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, is they could have, exaggerated it. It could have been nothing. But, either way, it does put a little bit of a mark on his free agent caliber of talent, such that you imagine he's probably not going to get the same kind of deal he originally signed with the Ravens.
No, well, he visited the Colts recently and passed their physical exam. So he must be, fairly...
he's fine. He'll be fine.
Yeah. But that's what I'm trying to say. He failed one with the Ravens, but the Ravens were in a position where Crabtree become available. They probably exaggerated it because they wanted Crabtree instead, because Crabtree was actually going to earn less money than Ryan Grant, and he's more of an established player. So, and then he went to the Colts, passed the physical, but then the Raiders called up, and then he's visiting us now. So I think that he won't get as much money as he'd like, but I think it will still be a substantial amount in terms of personally for himself.
Yeah, maybe. I don't think he pays him that much, but now that the market settled down a little bit, I don't think he's going to get as much as he would have liked.
No. I mean, the numbers are bonkers this year, aren't they? Some of the teams, the amount of spending they've done, it's mind-boggling. I don't know what I'd do with about $30 million.
That's what Reggie's so smart. He waited till that madness went down and signed the other guys who's not even that bad. So,
yeah, I mean, and Ndamukong Suh's going to his next visit, and he's all about the money, isn't he? So I reckon he'll get paid.
Yeah. Hey, James, let's move on to the draft, shall we?
Yes, sir. Fair warning. I have not done a ton of research on the draft yet. I'm not a guy who watches a ton of college football, so typically right about now after free agency, I start doing hardcore research. But I've got enough knowledge to talk first round, but maybe not a lot of deep rounds.
No, that's. Yeah. I don't watch college ball either. Right after the combine, or right before after the Super Bowl, I'll start watching the big players and the positions of need. So I got to first 2-3 rounds maybe I can talk about too. So let's do that. Let's talk about pick number 10, man. No, we don't want to just go after need. We want to go after best player as well, but. We don't have, you talked about right tackle, you talked about wide receiver. There's no right tackle or wide receiver we're taking that high, is there? I think we have to go defense. So, what do you think? What are your top options on defense?
So I will say real quick with right tackle, I think it is a potential possibility if they move back. That's always something that could happen.
Right.
A trade back. And so that's something, and if they got a guy who was capable of starting at right tackle and then moving to left tackle in year or two, that would be a move in the first round I would be okay with. Otherwise, I think defense is clearly what's on my mind and everyone else's mind.